Now, I thought this was very interesting when I saw this. Yeah. And see this? This was in your friendly Newsweek. Okay. And this is entitled The Gold Rush. And on his forehead is stamped Biopharmaceuticals Genetic Patent 2000 United States Industry. Okay, isn't that interesting? Okay, so this is the gold rush. Not only is his mind the gold rush, but also his DNA. Because see in the background here, you see the money signs? But see, this is something known as gel electrophoresis. And this is where we can take the protein from an individual, from the nucleus of their cells, and we can actually put it into this gel, and their DNA will actually line up itself. These are the genes. And that's why we can basically then take the genes from someone else, take your genes, and we can take those gels and lay them right next to each other. And if they're the same genetic makeup, the lines will be in the exact same place. So this was not just a decorative background back here. Those people who know, recognize that it's not only the mind, but it's also this individual's chromosomes and DNA that is the gold rush. Okay? Oh yeah, clearly. Okay. So someone up here said that he was melanin dominant and African. Real clear, right? Yeah. Now, do not doubt what you are seeing, because this is a series of 3 volumes that comes out every 4 years. I bought this first series in 1994, and it is a group of researchers from all over the world that present their research every 4 years on this one topic. And the topic is melanin. Scientifically, it's known as the melanotropic peptide. Tropic means to generate, to proliferate. So what is this proliferative capabilities of this peptide, or this protein here? So they looked at the source of it, where it came from, the synthesis of it, the chemistry, the secretion, the circulation, and the metabolism of this. Now, when you looked at all of the contributors to these 3 volumes of work, none of them came from any countries that were melanin dominant or from any melanin dominant institutions. So therefore, where did they get the melanin from to study? Because it didn't come from them, because they are melanin recessive. Now, it's very interesting. If you're not invited to these symposiums, or if you're not a member that contributes to the research, if you find out about this, then you have to pay. These 3 volumes cost me $650. So that was set up intentionally, because we know that most people are not going to pay $650 for 3 volumes of books, unless you really love yourself to find out what is known about you, which is why I bought these volumes. Now, this information is very interesting. This comes from the Journal of the National Medical Association. Now, this is very significant, because the National Medical Association is the black faction of the AMA. Now, they know, because they published this article, and they published this article in 1975, that there were lifelong differences in hemoglobin levels between blacks and whites. Now, Stanley M. Garn is from the University of Michigan. See that? The Center for Human Growth and Development, University of Michigan, and the Department of Pediatrics and Anthropology at Washington School of Medicine, etc. This study contained thousands and thousands of school children from 1968 to 1970. And it says here that we encountered a relatively large and systematic black-white difference in hemoglobin levels. So now it was real clear, and they use this and for evaluation of preschool nutrition, etc. And they concluded, and they knew that if you took the values for Caucasian and used them as the standard for Africans, that the Africans were definitely not going to get the nutritional or the correct diagnosis for the condition of their blood. Now now you have to understand this information stayed exactly where it is right now on this piece of paper. This gentleman from the university, now you have to understand this. Now this is interesting because Stanley Garn sent me almost 400 pages of data on the racial studies that University of Michigan has done on all races. It is the think tank for storing this information. Now you have to understand that Stanley Garn submitted this to the Black Medical Association. He told the black doctors that your blood is not the same as Caucasians and you have to look at their blood differently or you're going to mistreat your people. There are no black doctors that I know of, except for the ones that have written me, that see your blood this way. Because they were taught in medical school to only use the standard that is used in the Western world, which are Caucasian measurements, and everybody is actually diagnosed based on Caucasian standards. So it's a known fact, for example, that if an African woman presents with a hemoglobin of 10.5, that is normal for her. That is not an anemia. Our standard is 10.5 to 12. Caucasian standards are 12 to 14. But you will be given iron pills in any institution you go into here if you present with a hemoglobin of 10 or 10.5. Because by the Caucasian standard, that is abnormal, and then you are told you have a problem, and giving you iron pills sets you into a whole different illusion and does precipitate illness. But the information is known, and you have to understand that Stanley Garn, when I wrote him, never ever charged me 1 penny for all the research he gave me, because obviously he was definitely trying to save his soul for what he knew the situation was. But this has been completely repressed. It has never been taught in any of the continuing medical education classes throughout any of the medical schools, etc. But it is all known. And he intentionally submitted this to the Black Medical Association, and they printed it as a novelty, but they never actualized it. Now, please understand that research on all races, but definitely because I'm talking about my race family at the moment, is a real reality. And everything that could be thought of to research has been done on us. It says here, Caucasian genes in American Negroes. They have done research and have been observing the effect of miscegenation. How does an African who is miscegenated behave versus one who basically is 100% pure genetic African from Africa? They know the difference. And it's very interesting here because it said it was very difficult to describe the genetic history of a large defined human population in a meaningful way. But they go on and talk about how they did this. They identified the gene here that they were using, the McDuffie allele, which occurs in Caucasians. It never appears in Africans unless that African bloodline has been miscegenated. So they took all of the blood that they could get their hands on, and I think about the sickle cell centers that were being used for far more than just determining sickle cell, to determine how many of us, as we went to these centers, had the McDuffie allele in our bloodstream. Because they went to Africa, and from the data, and this article was so interesting, because from the data that was saved in Savannah, Georgia, Virginia, and one other location where all the slaves were being brought in, they kept the records from where they were coming from in Africa, and they went back to Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria, and drew their bloods to make sure they had the standard of their DNA so that when they compared ours, they would see the difference and the degree of miscegenation. So all of this is being done. I don't know if Wanique remembers that, but you know, again, I was asked to go to Grady Hospital to speak to the hepatitis C support group. And to really show you how God works here, we got to talking and they were very excited about what I told them, because normally they go there to just kind of console each other until they die. And we talked about the fact that hepatitis C can be treated like hepatitis A and B, but you need to do something different. So it got lengthy. So anyway, by the time we finished, I wanted to go to the bathroom, and everything in the reception building, or the Secretary Administrative Building, that's what it was, had closed. So therefore the lavatories were closed, etc., the area, the library. And so one of the individuals there who knew the building said, well, you can go downstairs to the bathroom. So I'm like, okay, fine. So they gave us the directions, so Wanique was assisting me. So we're going down the stairs, and it turns totally into a different world. We leave a floor that is totally lined with marble walls, Byzantine ceilings, etc., and we are now on a stairwell that has mops, buckets, pails all down the side of it, etc. I couldn't believe it was in the same building. So I said, we are definitely in the wrong place. I don't even know who comes in this part of the building because it hasn't even been kept. And so Wanique said, no, you know, I know it's down here somewhere. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to follow him. So as we finally got down to the next landing, because it was very strange, because it was even like a double stairwell. So it's going very, very deep down into the basement of this building. In looking for the bathroom, which we found was definitely not a bathroom that was used often, we also stumbled into a high security research laboratory. And over the double doors with the card padlocks, etc., hung the African American prostate DNA Research Center. The African American Testosterone and Prostate DNA Research Project. Now, see, you have to understand how profound that was, because this was the administrative building where the library is and the dean's office and whatever else. And we were not even supposed to even be down here because they got mops and buckets on the floors, etc. It was a double stairwell because we kept going down and down. There was no floor until we got way down underneath this building. And this had double keypads and had to have cards and know the combination and everything to get in here. And I said, well, no wonder. I said, any man that rolls up in Grady, if you talk about any problem below your navel, your prostate is going to be in this lab. Because they're getting paid for it. They had all the graphs on the walls because our nose was flat. We were looking so hard through the little windows. They had all the graphs on the walls. They had all the studies numbered. It was a huge research lab. So they were using the prostate to elucidate the DNA or the gene that produces the level of testosterone in African men. Now, whether you know it or not, the African male out of all males on the planet has the highest level of testosterone. That's why you have the muscle mass, the bone structure, and everything. And if you travel around the world, you can look at your physiology, your physique, and see that it's much denser, far more muscle mass, far firmer, less aging, etc., than any other race of people. You know, so the key here is that they are recognizing this, and many of these studies where they talk about being able to have instant muscles from vaccine, this is how they're getting all this information. So I was just really surprised about the fact that this was a covert prostate study being done on African American men on the elucidating level of their testosterone and using it through their prostate. So at that time it was interesting because the papers were correlating the high incidence of prostate cancer in Atlanta. And so I even questioned if that was even true, okay, because they had to get so many specimens, etc., to do this research, okay. So as we are now talking about genes and research, it's like I said, you know, this is a human problem. So they are researching on all humans, okay? And here's a little Asian baby, and what they have is the little Asian baby sitting in its genome. So when they print the genome out, this is how it looks. And each one of these letters represents what we call a nucleotide base that forms the DNA, the genes, and the chromosomes of that individual. And the order of them is quite important and specific. So it's interesting because there was a movie that talked about this. And the name of it is Gattaca. And Gattaca was derived from these letters of a nucleotide base. So guanine, adenine, thymine, cytosine, this is what these letters represent. But if you also look at this, they're also telling you that they have not only been looking at genes for physical characteristics, but also for states of emotion. They're looking for the genes of emotion. Look at that: greed, happiness, inquisitiveness, aggressiveness, impulsiveness, anxiety, IQ. These are the things that they are also evaluating, because they know for a fact that every emotion you have, if it is a chronic emotion, is encoded on your DNA. Because emotions, as all thoughts, are also chemistry in the body. That's why you feel the way you do, because the brain creates the corresponding chemical from your thoughts to tell your cells what to do. So if you haven't forgotten, this is actually how the little cuties look. And it's interesting, in all races, the chromosomes are black. Okay, because every race has been given the ultimate protection from external exposure to radiation, laser, etc. And the substance that covers all genes and chromosomes is melanin. Okay? So all chromosomes are black because they basically are covered with melanin, because melanin absorbs light. It neutralizes the effects of ultraviolet light, cosmic rays, X-rays that might actually cause the DNA to take on an abnormal configuration, which means that it will actually cause a mutation or a defect in its message to the cells.